Welcome to the American Academy of Emergency Medicine Women in Emergency Medicine section, virtual mentoring session for osteopathic medical students. My name is Caroline. I am an OMS 3 at PCOM South Georgia, and I will be moderating tonight's session. So tonight's program will be recorded and uploaded to AAEM WIEM's website within 24 hours. The session is meant to be interactive, so please use the Q&A function if you would like to ask a question or comment. We welcome and encourage your participation. We're a friendly group and look forward to getting to know each other better tonight. So I'm curious, attendees, please take a moment now to tell us where you're from by providing a welcome message in your city and state in the chat box, or tell us a little bit about yourself. All right, so today I have the privilege to introduce our panelists. And panelists, as I introduce you, you can give a little wave and come on the screen. So first we have Saida Morgan. She's an OMS 4 at PCOM Sewanee campus. She recently matched into EM at MGMC. She loves to perform in her room, in car, hike, travel, and connect with loved ones. All right. And next we have Melody Kashani, Dr. Melody Kashani. She is a PGY1 in emergency medicine at UIC. She does Peloton, strength, and cardio classes, and she loves hanging out with friends. Next panelist we have is Kristen Purcell. She is an OMS 4 at Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine, soon to be PGY1 at UNLV. You can find her doing absolutely anything and everything outdoors when the white coat comes off. And last but not least, we have Magda Garcia. She is an OMS 4 at Western U in Pomona, California, soon to be PGY1 at LAC USC. She loves cooking with all the gadgets that she can get her hands on. All right, so panelists, the floor is yours. Let's start with Saida Morgan. So of course, tonight's session is about demystifying VSAS. So what advice do you have for us, and what are some pitfalls with applying through VSAS?
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. I have a, I hate VSAS. I just want to throw that out there. But it is definitely a helpful tool. One advice I would definitely recommend with VSAS is apply early. Just apply early, because then if you don't, like by the time you apply, they're not going to take the rotation down. So you'll still apply, but there won't be any spots left. So obviously, like the earliest you can apply, the better. I would say a pitfall is that like you will apply to a rotation and there will be no spots, but the rotation is still up. So you paid $15 and you've submitted all of your stuff thinking you're waiting on a rotation, but the rotation is actually full. So if you can just, try to plan ahead as possible, be proactive. And I've actually reached out to some of the programs, like directly, like some of the coordinators, and like asked them like, hey, like I want to apply before I do X, Y, and Z. I just want to know if you have any spots. They'll let you know if they do. I'll follow up with them and say, okay, I sent my app, like where am I in the process? And like sometimes they'll respond. So be as proactive as possible.
All right, any other panelists? Do you guys have anything to add to that, or that pretty much covered it? Good, okay. All right, so the next question I have is for Dr. Kashani. So what did your fourth year timeline kind of look like, or what should it look like? And what should be done prior to applying to VSAS?
All right, hi guys. So this is kind of a hard question for me because I went through VSAS during COVID. So I did all the applying, I paid all the money, and I ended up having to go door to door and trying to find some kind of rotation to fill my fourth year. It was extremely stressful. I hope you guys didn't have to deal with that this year. But basically, so With VSAS, I just remember everyone telling me, make sure you get your vaccinations up to date, get all that paperwork in, get your like everything situated, just like how Seda was saying that like have everything prepared. I also emailed coordinators prior to applying, just kind of like showing interest genuinely for programs that I really wanted to potentially rotate at, and also maybe even apply to, obviously. So that kind of puts like a, hey, like I'm interested in your program, please like, pick me, but it clearly did not work because VSAS was a mess, 2020. So I would say that's really important. Just think of a thoughtful statement saying why you want to do that rotation, even if it is just like an elective. And then going forward, fourth year, set up your auditions early on. Obviously, you're going to want your best foot forward. You want to have all the energy for those like first 3 rotations. My year was crazy, so I only had like 1 month of like a true audition. So for those, I'm assuming everyone's going into emergency on this one, right? Yeah, so auditions are everything. So make sure you schedule that appropriately. I would say maybe put like the program that it's not quite your number one, but somewhere that you want to go to like your first month so that you kind of get your toes wet and like you understand, okay, how everything works. So by your second month, you're like, okay, I got this. And you can actually audition at a program that you really want and you're going to kill it. And then make sure your step scores and everything are in early, get URAS filled out. Hopefully everything should be prepared by October. That's pretty much what I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Any panelists have anything to add to that? Anything particular about their 4th year and what it looks like? Anything specifically? If not, we can just move on, but it's fine.
So also just one other side note is just like consider if you want to audition at an academic versus community, and that kind of gives you an idea of what you are going to apply to when ERAS comes around. So I think that's an important thing to remember with OAs.
Alrighty, thank you. Okay, so next question I have is for Ms. Kristen Purcell. So how did you decide where, when, and what to apply to on VSAS, which I'm currently struggling with right now?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people really like you have to get a SLO before, and at least like, so the 2022 graduate caveat is that a lot of programs required at least only 1 just because of COVID and because we were only allowed to do 2 away rotations. And so there are different rules. And so rule number 1, know what the rules are, go through and like, if there's somewhere that like you want to apply to in the future, like as a residency, just be cognizant of their current rules of like, are you guys requiring 1, 2, 3 SLOs, like whatever. So just rule number 1, know your rules. Secondly, so kind of going back into my caveat of my application cycle, there was one place that I really wanted to get a rotation to because I wanted to go there for residency. And so obviously I applied there, but another kind of like back alley way of also getting to interact with those departments is also rotating through very similar rotations. So for example, University of Utah has an emergency medicine, and I'm just using this like for example, but they have an emergency medicine rotation, but then they also have toxicology. And then some rotation sites will have ultrasound. And so you will probably get very burnt out of just doing EM rotation after EM rotation after EM rotation. So it's really nice to kind of schedule those like little like pickpocketed different like subspecialties of EM throughout the year. So specifically during interview seasons, you're like, hey, I'm here on ultrasound in October, what's up? And you're like already showing them that you're like a really good candidate, you work really well on their team, they might be considering you. I had a really weird like sort of schedule in the very beginning of my 4th year. So I only did 1 away rotation in I can't even remember what month it was. Like, this is what fourth year does to you. I don't remember like a lot of things nowadays, but I did one away rotation at Cook County, like right before, I think it was in July. Yeah, it had to have been in July. And then that was like my one slow. And so then I also opted to do another away rotation in December, but at a place that I really wanted to go to. And so I was there during December and they offered me an interview automatically. So if there's somewhere like that you know that you really want to go to, consider applying to it. You don't have to do it during June, July, August. Like, you can totally do it later on. Emergency medicine interviews between like October and February. So really anything within that timeline, it kind of gives you a little bit more wiggle room with your schedule. So that is my little wrap up.
All right, I kind of have a follow-up question to that. So if we're applying EM, that's what we're going for. What electives or away rotations do you recommend that we do? You mentioned ultrasound, toxicology. What are others that we should consider?
I did peds EM actually, and I did like a slow or an OSLO, right? That was the elective one technically, because my year was weird and I could only have one audition, and that was like my second like kind of like I did EM in some sort of way, but peds is pretty good. I would definitely recommend that.
All right, and also attendees, feel free to ask any questions that you want. I didn't mention that in the beginning, but definitely feel free and I'll read them out so the panelists can see it and we don't miss it. All right, so next question I have is for Ms. Magda Garcia. So what did you do to prepare for the VSAS applications? What did that look like for you?
So a lot of the prep that I did was actually in the early months of the year, think like January to March-ish or so. And it was just really a lot of what was already said in terms of paperwork, vaccinations. I perused all of the different entries of the places that I thought I might be interested in to see what their requirements are. I remember there was one application I filed where I hadn't noticed until the day of that it opened that they needed you to do some kind of like computer certification so that they could get you a login. So I had to rush really quickly. And thankfully it was something that only took maybe 20 minutes of my time. But that was 20 minutes that I wasn't applying because we had, I remember during our VSAS year, there was one particular day where a lot of places opened right off the bat. And so during that day, on top of applying to all of the different places that are opening up, I was struggling with getting that taken care of. So it's just a lot of just doing back-end research, whether it's through the department's website, through the VSAS entries that were already there, even if they weren't necessarily 100% up to date, because you could start getting a picture of what was needed. The other part, and this will come actually really, it'll come in handy once you start filling out ERAS as well, was I got a lot of help with my CV. So some places may ask you for some type of personal statement, some places won't, but some may ask you for a CV or a resume of some kind. So getting your professional development office on campus to help you out and just do a basic run through of all of the different activities you have on there. I had a really good friend of mine help me out and edit in terms of making it easy to read, which was really nice. She made a lot of the things that I had on there more succinct, and the easier you make all of your documents to read, the better off you're going to be in the long run. And really all of that, by the time I was putting ERAS together, it just felt like I was copying and pasting in all of my activities, which was such a nice feeling. And it also started giving me an idea of what I may want to talk about in something like a personal statement or a letter of interest too. So working again with professional development or the people that are close to you in your life and putting those documents together, I think are going to be really, really important. And then just staying on top of your deadlines, and it's going to be the same thing for your fourth year timeline. At this point, it's April. So if you wanted to start mapping out from the month of April through the month of like January, February, and just kind of make a spreadsheet for yourself for a calendar and start putting dates in so that you know what needs to happen when, you can already start helping yourself out and just being really prepared and on top of everything so that you're not as stressed when the time comes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Garcia. That was really helpful. I guess another question that I have is, this goes for any of y'all. Did you guys get any like scholarships or know of any funding opportunities or anything for away rotations or electives?
So I applied to a few, I didn't get them, but essentially what you want to think about with VSAS is kind of the pathway to your SLOs, but it can also open up geographic regions for you if you're interested in going to certain places. And so that being said, a lot of these different residency programs will have some kind of a diversity scholarship that you can apply into and things like that. And diversity doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be from a minority. It can mean that you're first generation. It can mean that you grew up economically disadvantaged, whatever you can think about to tell your story. It's also a really good opportunity to put your name out there. And I think that may have actually helped me get one of the aways that I did get, because I had applied to the diversity scholarship. So they were able to get a little bit more of a personal statement from me than just the basic CV and fill out VSAS and all of the other documents. So a lot of what I did during third year and fourth year was I started following, and this was a tip that I got because I'm not very Twitter active, but I started following programs on Twitter, on Instagram. And that's where I've been seeing actually in the last few weeks, a lot of the different programs that I was following have now put up their diversity scholarships or opened up their clerkships and posted it on social media. So that's where you can probably stay most on top of who's opening what and what kind of offerings there are.
So I know for me, I didn't get any scholarships either, but I sent one out to you, Caroline. But like, if you are like certain organizations, like if you use your network, like a lot of people that I'm close to are on SNMA. So like through that, they will send out like, oh, here's the scholarship if you're trying to do an EM rotation. Or like another one of my friends, he was in another organization and he knew I wanted to do EM. So he was like, well, here's another scholarship if you want to do an away rotation. So I would say utilizing your network as much as possible is also a great way to get any type of scholarships or any information that you need for certain programs.
And just a side note too, I know we're talking about VSAS, but there's also a website called Clinician Nexus where that's completely free to apply to rotations, unlike VSAS, unfortunately. But during my time, I was able to get a lot of rotations through that. I mean, mostly I'm from Florida, so a lot of the programs were in Florida, so that was helpful, but definitely worth taking a look at.
All right, thank you. So another question that I have is, I remember I was looking at VSAS and some like programs have it where there's like a minimum COMLEX score or like a minimum USMLE. Some of them just have USMLE. It's like obviously as DOs, like, I mean, some people take USMLE and some don't. So if you're interested in doing a rotation there, like, is it a waste of money to apply anyway if you're below that, or like you didn't take USMLE? Did any of you guys do that?
So a lot of times those minimums that they put in there can also correlate with the minimums that they follow for interviews. Unfortunately, like, as much as I would like to say that the process of interviewing for residencies has become holistic, there were thousands of applications that were sent out hours after, you know, people submitted their ERAS applications. And so there are going to just be some programs that are like that. I guess like I would kind of question myself of like, you know, is this a place where I want to go, where I feel like I'm going to be truly valued as a candidate if like all they look at are numbers? So that's kind of my 2 cents. But a lot of the times program directors will, that's kind of like we also use this for our interviews for our programs. So they also use that for their minimum for their VSAS applications.
With that being said, just like send an email to the coordinator. Like, why not, right? What do you have to lose by just asking? And they might even just be like, nah, that's just, I've heard so many instances where like that was incorrect. They haven't updated it. So just do your due diligence and email.
Okay. Another question that I have is, I guess, okay, so this was to Kristen, just about financial discrimination against DO students. Not that anything that I've seen yet, but I've heard that for some programs or some rotations, like MD students will pay like a lower price than like DO students will have to pay like $1,000 or something crazy. What do you know about that?
So that definitely has decreased significantly. I actually when I was going through my third year, I made like an entire spreadsheet of like every single program and what they charge their MD and their DO counterparts. And it was like 4 programs that there was a difference. And so back in the day, that used to be like a pretty big issue. However, like very thankfully, like that has gone down. So when it comes to just like financial planning, unfortunately, I don't think most of us are made out of gold. And so a lot of the money that goes towards your VSAS applications come out of either people's student loans, comes out of the money that they have saved up through various jobs, however you end up getting money. And so I know, still be smart about like where you're applying and think about your due diligence. People apply like super early on, which is really important for getting in those applications that are great, but you can also apply to VSAS throughout the year. So if you end up like having an elective block like later in the year you can totally fill it on later. So just kind of like, I don't know, really try to pro and con things that you would genuinely want to do versus spreading yourself financially, because then you also will have to later on in the year for ERAS also submit applications for residency, which is also a good chunk of change. So just, be diligent in like your planning for that.
All right. Just trying to see if any attendees have any questions because I'm running out of questions, to be honest. But I guess in terms of like audition rotations and things like that, like I was talking to someone and they said, oh, it's good to do audition rotations for programs that are like your kind of like your top tier or like your reach, so you can get an interview. Like, how do you kind of decide like what your audition rotation should be, if that makes sense?
I guess I'll answer this. So previous years before me, they would audition in states that they were interested in. So they kind of show that like, okay, like I'm willing to leave my hometown or wherever you are in medical school. And that kind of shows that, okay, willing to leave out of state, willing to apply to other programs. So you can always take that into consideration. Like I said, academic versus community, or like a hybrid, just to get kind of an idea of what you want to have in your residency program one day. Mine has like both, which works out great, but some programs are just community, some programs are just academics. And I think auditioning in those kind of programs will help you kind of identify your interests. Another thing, I don't know, it's hard sometimes. Sometimes you're not going to be able to get the program that you want, but you have to make the best out of your situation, which happened to me. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where you rotate, as long as you do your best. You are literally, showing that you want to be there, that you're enthusiastic, that you are genuinely interested in emergency medicine. I think that slow will take you a long way, no matter where you rotate, honestly.
Okay, so this question isn't really particular to VSAS, but did any of you take like both USMLEs and of course both COMLEX, or did any of you just take COMLEX?
So I took both. I took USMLE and COMLEX, but one of my classmates who matched with me in the same program, she just took COMLEX. So, and I know a couple people, like a couple of my friends who just took COMLEX and matched. So It's hard to say. I guess it depends on the program. Like, definitely look at the program, look at what they want. If you can, like, if you do audition at a place that, you know, like you potentially want to go, you want to rank, I would speak to the program director, speak to the program coordinator, kind of see what they're looking for. Because it really just depends. Because I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have took US. I could have just stuck with complex. But I took both. So
Yeah, I feel like we're still in murky waters because, you know, everything is single accreditation now, right? So the hope is that over the years they keep considering the complex more and more. But the way that it was, or one of the ways that it was explained to me, you know, before I got to that point of making decisions about which exams to take was just, you're in a position where you want to open as many doors for yourself as you can along the way. So if you're still kind of toying with that decision, and there are many reasons for why you would just take a complex or you would take both, talk to your academic advisors, talk to some of the people at the programs that you are thinking about very highly, and see what their opinions are on the subject, because you want to, again, put yourself in the position where you have as many doors open for you as possible as you go through this process.
All right, thank you, Ms. Garcia. So we have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll just read them out. From Giovanni, I really hope I'm saying your name right. Do you have any tips of how to shine in a VSAS rotation, like an away rotation?
I think one thing that's really important is just really take ownership of your patient. I think a lot of people spread themselves too thin because they get this mentality where they're like, I'm going to see all the patients. And it's like, no, like bite what you can chew and show that you can do it really well. They're going to be impressed that you know every single little thing about your patient in regards to when labs are coming back, when that CT came back, like you want to know basically those things about your patient before your attending or your resident finds out about them. And that's really how you put your best foot forward. So I think one of the things that your first like couple of days there, just kind of get your feet in the water. Like, don't think that you have to like come running out of the gates amazing. They really want to see that you're able to be teachable, you're able to progress throughout the month. And that, again, you really just take ownership over your patient.
All right, any other panelists have anything to add to that? If not, I can just move on to the next question.
There were different resources that I really enjoyed using while I was on my OAs, just for basic content and knowledge. Obviously, there's the C3 episodes from EMRA, and so those can help build your knowledge base, especially earlier on in your auditions. There's WikiEM, which is going to be very helpful to you on shift. Keeping that in mind, I definitely 100% am going to agree with taking ownership of your patients and be future oriented. So when you're seeing your patients, a lot of us during third year become reporters of data. So we say, this is the history, this is physical exam, and we kind of leave it at that. Even if your plan isn't the most solid, even if it's out of left field, start making those, start going through that thought process and include it in your presentation, because it's going to give you an idea of what you know, what you don't know, what you can improve on, and it's going to let your preceptors know that you are kind of making those, having those thoughts in your head already that you're going to be expected to have literally 1 year later as an intern. So keep that in mind as you're seeing your patients, and start thinking about what you would want to do for them, why you would order the tests that you're going to order, those kinds of things. For content and for tips on how to perform well, I also use the EM Clerkship podcast. It's free on Spotify. He has a really nice series of different episodes where he actually goes, point by point on different things that you can do well to shine on your rotations. And that was actually really helpful, just to help me get a picture of what I might be expected to do. And something else that I would really encourage you to do is to think about and go through and read what you're being graded on. So go read the SLO, know exactly how you're being evaluated, because that's actually that way you know what's expected of you, and you can kind of use those points to guide your learning while you're on shift.
And y'all were saying in terms of the slows that some programs require like more than one, correct? And so you need to kind of be proactive at least and know, right, before applying.
So the way that it happened for our year was, I think, roughly around this time of the year, actually, CORD, which is the Council of Residency Directors for EM, put out a joint statement saying, hey, these are the expectations. All applications should be considered complete as long as they have one slow. So the hope is that this year, sometime in the next few weeks or months before ERAS comes out, they start giving that kind of guidance again, because things happen to be opening up a little bit more, but things could also change in the next few weeks. We don't really know what's going to happen. So I would follow CORD on Instagram and on Twitter, because that was literally how I found out about it, or on Facebook, any of the social media platforms. As soon as that statement came out, it started kind of going through our class like a wildfire. So keep an eye out for that statement.
Looks like we all need to be on Twitter. So attendees, make sure you make your Twitter account be in the know. Sounds like the best thing to do. All right, so another question in the chat. So were there any differences when rotating in a core rotation versus an audition rotation? I guess, do you think like preceptors probably expect more of you in an audition rotation, I guess, versus a core?
I think it's important to just be consistent no matter what, whether it's your core or your way. I think that's gonna end up making you shine in the end, because you're still getting evaluated from both rotations. So you don't want one rotation to like sound weird and off compared to like your audition, for example. So just do your best.
I think core was also like so for my school, core was like an actual thing, rotation that we had to do. So that might just be like your school's curriculum if it's saying core. And so you can still like, so our school, for example, when we were doing our like lottery system for our rotations, knowing that we have to do an EM rotation, one of the best things one of the strategies, I will say, that some people took was to set that EM core during like the first few months. So they like had like an immediate, and especially like if your school has like rotation sites that have residencies, because slows have to come from a site with a residency, have to come from a program director. And so like some people would like slot their EM rotation like very early on and put this one place that our school rotates at number one, because they wanted to get a slow from there and want to go there for residency. So core, from my understanding, is usually more of like your school's curriculum, whereas an away rotation is you are going outside of your school's curriculum, you are going on an elective rotation somewhere else, and you are auditioning to be there. That's my understanding. Is that everyone else's too? Okay.
Let's see if there's anything more in the chat. Someone was asking, do you happen to know which programs they got into? I guess the panelists, right? That's what she's asking.
I think they asked that question when Seda was talking about Comlex only taking.
Oh,
Comlex.
gotcha. Oh, right. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you. So I got into, my classmate, we got into North East Georgia Medical Center in Gainesville. So that's the one we got in. And like my other friend that I was talking about, she matched in surgery. So it was an EM. And that was in Virginia. So yes, everybody else that I know that matched EM, I think took both Complex and USMLE.
And Magda, would you mind putting in the chat the resources that you mentioned? Yeah, that'll be really helpful if you don't mind. And okay, another question by Corel Campbell. She said, did anyone have to take an end of rotation exam at the end of your audition? If so, do you think it impacted your slow?
So I didn't have to take an end of rotation exam, but I did have to take like quizzes throughout my audition rotation. I don't know how much it impacted my slow, but I do know that when I actually got my actual eval back for that rotation, she did write my quiz grades on there. So I'm sure it impacted my slow in some way, but she did write the average of my quiz scores. So, but I only had to do that for one of my auditions, not for the other.
I like specifically remember writing in like my personal statement to this place where I was like, oh, I think it's like really cool that you guys like have students take this exam at the end because it shows that you're into, you know, like updated medical education. And then I had to study for that exam. And I was like, I was a little upset with myself for doing that, but it ended up turning out fine. So the most, it was like, I played myself. So the most common one that I've seen is one that's administered by SAEM. You guys will see, I just posted it in the chat, and they actually had resources like with those exams. So it's like a standardized test that is given by SAEM, but also residencies can come up with their own stuff. They can give you quizzes. Usually it's not too bad. There's so many resources out there that you guys are going to do phenomenal on them. So I posted a link to the one that I had to take.
I had an end of rotation test for a couple. For the first one I did as a third year, I used an elective. And so I don't know if they actually included it in, I didn't ask for a slow from there, so I don't know if they would have included it. But for one of my fourth year auditions, they did tell us that it was worth about 10% of our slow. So just keep an ear out. Really, it's just managing expectations. So if you know that you have a test coming up, just talk to your clerkship coordinator and your clerkship director, you know, just ask them how much impact. For some people, they'll say, oh, it doesn't weigh a lot. We just want to see where you're at. For some, it might weigh a little bit. So just ask around.
Okay, so I know each school is different as far as like whether you have dedicated time for boards or whatever. But for y'all, when did you guys take step 2 or level 2? Was it before fourth year started? Was it after applications, after you turned in ERAS? Like, when did y'all take it?
So I was kind of non-traditional in that I took step 1 right before fourth year, actually, like May of fourth year, and then took step 2 literally in August of fourth year, so I could get my score back before ERAS. It worked out fine. I took Comlex like September of like third year, so that was a way, you know, that was when I was scheduled for it. But Comlex level 2 I took January or February, right before rank list was due. So, but you know, at that point I felt confident with my step 1 and step 2 score. So I was like, oh, like Comlex, I can like wait for it, because I was still getting interviews without it. Would I recommend doing that? Not really, just because like fourth year, you want to be like enjoying everything. Like you have so much free time after you're done with interviews. You don't want to have to worry about another test, especially when you're auditioning earlier on too. That was very stressful. So I know everyone's different. That's how I did mine.
Yeah, so I was also kind of non-traditional because I had like a lot of going on like personally. So like everything got pushed back for me. So who was mentioning fourth year brain? I think it was Kristen, because now I can't even remember the dates. So I took, I'm just gonna go with the step 2s because I don't remember you guys. So I took step 2 in September. No, I'm sorry, I took Complex 2 in September of, I guess it would be fourth year. And then I actually took step 2 in November of fourth year. So I kind of took my level 2s a little late. But I obviously I had my step 1 and my complex 1s in, but again, would I recommend it? I don't know, but also life happens. So like if life happens, like life happens, just goes with it. I mean, it's worked out, but yeah, obviously, like if you can take it earlier, you know, like Dr. Kashani was saying, like you just want to chill fourth year, like you already have applications you have to worry about, like to be studying and like prepping for exams just adds another layer of stress. So if you can take it early, definitely take it early.
All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Okay, well, I have a question. Okay, so the EM, I guess the EM elective rotations that you guys took, what was your favorite, I guess? Or which one do you highly recommend?
So I scheduled one of my OAs, which I really did enjoy this program. But like I kind of scheduled it in like a vacation spot for me. Like EM is sweet. Like we only work like 14 shifts a month. Like you have a whole other amount of time that you can be exploring the area. So whether that's like, you know, doing an away and like a really cool location. For instance, I was in the mountains doing an away rotation. So when I was not on shift, or even sometimes before my shifts, I went snowboarding. So just like you can totally have fun during your fourth year. And, you know, if you're going to a residency that you're super interested in, and it also has like a really fun, like little like thing you can do on the side, like exploring, you still have those shift work in order to go and do those fun things. So I think definitely my favorite rotation was when I was out in Utah, just because I went snowboarding half of the time. So, and hiking.
So I guess I'll go. So my favorite was, I guess I'm biased, it was the one I actually matched in. I just really liked it because, so it was Northeast Georgia Medical Center. And I just really liked it because I just like the vibe. Like one thing I really love about EM is just like everybody, well, not everybody, but most people are really laid back and it's like super chill and like everybody's like talking shit. Like, so like, you know, you get to meet people and they have different personalities. And like, so I just loved it. Like my, the PD there, like he's so funny. Like you see him, he has like a whole sleeve, but like, he's like the coolest person. We all went out to eat one night. Like, so it was just an amazing time. It's just a great atmosphere. So I would say that was my favorite.
I would say ultrasound, mostly because you go in from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then like the rest of your day is free. So I did that like late after I submitted VSAS already, and it was so chill. Highly recommend. And you get to like learn skills and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I got really lucky. I really enjoyed both of the rotations I did. I rotated at LA County USC, which is where I matched, and then I rotated at Harbor UCLA too. And I know, especially at Harbor, a lot of the people that were in from out of town were able to do a lot of exploring. It's a lot closer to the beach. So I know people were able to go to the beach, find the breweries, find the restaurants in LA that are really good and things like that. So really, I think what everyone is saying in terms of the people that you're with, and that you're learning from, I think are going to make it the most fun. So as you're doing your research, again, being on those social media or going to the meet and greets that they talk about, it'll help you get a vibe for the residents that work there, because those are going to be the people that you're working with in the future. And so you're going to see if that's kind of the crowd that you fit into, crowd that you maybe don't fit into so much. So that'll help you determine if it's going to be a fun one or not.
All right, thank you. I just got really excited for my fourth year now. I like the things that you guys are saying, and I'm excited for EM and all of that. So that's good. I do not have any more questions, and I don't see any in the chat. We still have 15 more minutes, guys. So if you have any questions, please ask. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Dr. Kashani, are you saying that because you loved it so much?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I went skiing like twice, went to like Colorado twice. Yeah, it was great time. Great time.
Aw.
Enjoy it, guys.
All right, Giovanni has a question. Any tips for ERAS applications? Also, like, when did they open? I feel like I should know this, but like I have so many dates in my head, I can't keep up.
I think it opened roughly in July to start filling out. You don't submit until, or at least for us, I think we didn't submit till the very end. The final deadline to submit was the very end of September. People submitted throughout the month of September, and it didn't matter if you did it September 1st or at the very end. But you have some time to fill it out. So as you're planning out that 4th year calendar, kind of keep an eye on when you're doing the away rotations that you really care about so that you can put max effort. When you're taking a little bit more of a break, you might have some time to fill out ERAS then, but you do have a little bit of time in between.
Hunt down your letter of recommendation writers as soon as possible, because per usual with physicians, getting them to sign a piece of paper can be very difficult. So I would identify your letter of recommendation writers early and get their letter in early. I had 2 letter of LOR people who just like didn't submit it until 2 days after everyone else submitted. So like 2 days after like the deadline. So yeah, I was sitting over here like sending stress emails, but it ended up being completely fine. Like they still people still went through my application. I still got interviews. Like, so if that ends up happening, it'll be okay. But like decrease the stress in your life by hounding down your attendings earlier rather than later. I had a friend who like waited for 3 months for a letter from this one IM doc. Like, just bless their hearts, they got a lot going on. But get that in.
I would say work on your personal statement too, like early, like get that draft going, even if it sucks, and then just keep sending it to people, keep getting it revised, go to your schools, like editing, whatever department that they have, and just have someone else read it, just get different perspectives on like what your voice sounds like in it, what you need to improve on, what will make you stand out. I think that was like the hardest part of the application, is just making sure my personal statement was who I am and what I want to be depicted as. So just work on filling out everything earlier so that you're not stressing. I had a friend who literally like decided to wait until the week before submission to like fill out ERAS. I'm like, what are you doing? I was so stressed. Anyways, just don't do that.
Okay, we have a question from Tessie in the chat. She's asking if there was an average number of applications that you sent for a rotation in terms of how many accepted you and how many didn't work out. Yeah, not sure if it's in regards to VSAS or ERAS, but
I think she might be asking in regards to VSAS. I think my year, the advice I got was to think about maybe 4 to 5 places for each time block. So I kind of alternated them around. As I filled out these applications, I was like, for this time block, this is my first choice, this is my second choice, this is my third choice kind of situation. But the thing is that they're gonna reply to you as they decide. So that's the hard part in scheduling for your 4th year, is you're going to start hearing things back at different times. But something that people have echoed during the session is to get in touch with the coordinator for the clerkship, whether it's by phone, whether it's by email. If you're already at a point where you get a date back and maybe it doesn't work for you, that happened to me, and I really wanted to go. So I made a phone call, and within 15 minutes, she was like, okay, I got you in for a new date, you're good to go. So make those phone calls, send those emails, keep an eye out for when they tell you decisions are going to come out so that you can give them a little bit of wiggle room. You want to be eager, but not overbearing. This is this is kind of the start of your quote unquote interview season, if you think about it, because every person you communicate with at these programs is going to get a first impression of you. So just think about what you're going to write, what you're going to say before you do it, but go out there and communicate and show them that you're out there and you're really interested. And I think it's going to help you guys out a lot.
So can I just say, I know this is like demystifying VSAS, but I hate VSAS like with an absolute passion. So if I'm being honest, I didn't get any rotation from VSAS. And I know this is probably not helpful, being that this is a VSAS webinar, but I just kind of wanted to come on here and like share other ways that you can get rotations. Like a lot of the ways that I got a lot of my rotation was through networking. Like one of the alums from PCOM, Georgia, I reached out to her and I kind of eagerly, like Matthew was saying, like hounded her, because you do have to stay on top of physicians because they're really busy. You know, just like be nice and persistent, but not overbearing. And I reached out to her. It took me about a month, but I finally got a rotation with her. And then through her, I was able to get 2 or 3 other rotations. So VSAS is not the only way that, you know, that you can use to get a rotation. For one of my EM auditions, I was rotating within the IM department, and then I got really cool with the residents, and then she knew the PD for the EM department, and she was like, oh, let me introduce you to him. And then that's how I got that rotation. So, and then my other EM audition, I knew somebody because I used to work in a hospital. So like there's ways to navigate getting rotations other than VSAS, because VSAS is trash. I think it's trash because they take your money and and it's just so much. So again, you can use VSAS, utilize VSAS. It is a resource, but if you can, use your network, guys, because child, we not rich out here.
All right, thank you so much for that. Any other questions? Anybody? No? Still have a few minutes left, but I can also just end it. If there isn't anything else, it's no problem. Ooh, okay. Do you all have any socials? Twitter accounts, Instagrams? I guess put them in the chat if you'd like to share. All right. Yay. All right, well, those are all the questions that I have. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Okay, so I think that concludes our session. So guys, please join me in thanking Dr. Melody Kashani, Saida Morgan, Kristen Purcell, and Magda Garcia for sharing with us tonight. Really appreciate it, you guys. This was a really great session. I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure the attendees did as well. So yes, everyone, thank you for attending. We're always interested in your feedback. So as you leave the webinar tonight, please take a moment to answer a few short questions. And also please join us for our next session on May 12th. And this one is for board prep advice for COMLEX and USMLE. And to register for this and other upcoming sessions, please visit the website and select the appropriate links. So thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you again. And this now ends tonight's program. Good night, guys. Thank you so much.